Welcome to Why Every Supply Chain Professional Needs the APICS CSCP Certification, Part 1 of a 3-part webinar series. Today I would like to introduce Bob Collins, APICS Senior Director of Professional Development.
Thank you, Kim. And I would like to introduce my co-presenters, Celeste Ayers of Parker Hannifin Corporation and Janice Gullo, formerly of DuPont's Supply Chain Center of Excellence. Both Celeste and Janice have been longtime instructors of the CSCP courses, as well as APICS volunteers for local partners, as well as working with their companies, both in the supply chain area and for companies that really believe in the CSCP designation. So welcome, Celeste and Janice.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Very good. So what we'll cover today in this webinar is a broad overview of the CSCP program, from what is CSCP to when can you take the exam. There are hundreds of you attending today, which we're very excited about, and we're looking forward to answering any questions you might have about this program. We'll start by looking at APICS, the growing opportunities in the supply chain professional, and how CSCP can enhance your career. And then at the end, there will be a special offer for the attendees of this webinar. So this is APICS. APICS is the leading professional association for supply chain operations and logistics and distribution management. Logistics and distribution are newer to APICS, but we're very excited about some opportunities in that space as well. APICS works hard to cover the end-to-end supply chain, from supplier management through forecasting and customer management, customer demand. We offer membership, which certainly includes a lot of networking. We offer research and publications, and of course we offer both education and certification within the supply chain space. Celeste,
so on
why
this
don't you...
slide, okay, it's okay, Bob.
Yeah,
so on this slide,
I was just going to invite you to talk about this.
my apologies, Bob. So this is Celeste, and I'm happy to share with you this wonderful slide. This slide is extremely exciting. What it's showing is back in 2014, Supply Chain Management World, which is a widely respected supply chain publication, went and asked working professionals, what are the indicators of talent, supply chain markers of talent of individuals that you work with or hiring. And what they said is they asked them to rank their top 3 preferred associations and certifications. The top 2, as you see on this slide, are both APICS. APICS Supply Chain Professional and CPIM, and then right under that is APICS Supply Chain Council, which we merged in 2014. So the number 1, 2, and 3 spots are preferred first, second, and third, occupied the vast majority of the preference on all the different options here on this slide, which means that the certifications offered by APICS are preferred amongst all different kinds of industries and all different types of supply chain leaders.
Oh, that's great, Celeste. Thank you. APICS at a Glance, 46,000 members in over 100 countries around the world. We're a professional association, so all of our members are individual members, although we do have enterprise members where companies have a special opportunity to get their employees in as professional members. We have many channel partners, 195 chapters in North America and 103 international channel partners around the world teaching APICS courses, as well as APICS education and helping with exams and so on. We're represented in 47 countries over 5 continents. And of course, we've got these, the two primary certifications, CPIM and CSCP. Janice, why don't you tell us a little bit about the two certifications and how they might differ?
Sure, Bob, thank you. So when you're looking at two, you have Certified in Production and Inventory Management, CPIM, and Certified Supply Chain Professional, CSCP. Now, for looking at CPIM, this particular certification demonstrates the ability to understand and evaluate production and inventory activities within your own operations, so within your company's operations. And the first exam for CPIM was held in 1973. And since then, over 102,000 professionals have earned their CPIM. And this is the certification that has 5 exams that require you to pass the 5 exams for certification. Now, CSCP is a little bit different level, and it validates a mastery in supply chain. So it's a little bit more broad, and it's more on supply chain and operations extending out from your company. So while CPIM is more internally focused, CSCP is extending a broader look. And this certification has been in effect since 2006, and we have over 17,000 professionals who have earned their CSCP. Now, APICS certification are mostly recognized throughout the world, and it's really gratifying to see this, and they have really moved to the point where they're globally recognized certification. But one of the things that I get asked a lot is, which is the right certification for me? And we want to just kind of give you kind of an outlook as to what you should be considering. So it all depends on where your focus is. So if your focus is internal, again, inside the 4 walls of your company, you may want to go into a little bit more of a deeper view of how to run my processes better within the company. So your company's probably reached the point where they say, look, I need to improve what I'm doing and standardize my supply chains, but it's really more about fixing yourself. So it's a very detailed look and focus on the practitioner. So the practitioner, the person who's actually doing these types of roles. So as you can see from the slide, we're looking at things like product forecasting and master scheduling and materials requirements planning and so on. So it really focuses on improving that level, that more of a detail level. But now when you're looking at a more externally focused supply chain, you know, you're typically starting to get concerned about what your supply chain design looks like. You know, how do you link to your suppliers? So our suppliers and our customers are technically our partners. And if we can link more closely to them, you know, how do we design our supply chain to be more efficient, and how do we get more out of our processes? So CSCP is just a little bit more broad and extensive and looking more at your partners and how to collaborate with your partners. So basically you're looking at, you know, how to collaborate with your supply chain suppliers and your supply chain customers and their customers and supplier. And so it really is trying to you know, shorten that distance between the two. And so it all depends on your focus, so whether you want to be more internal within your 4 walls or if you want to do a little bit more broad. And typically what happens is companies will need a little bit of both, so you'll need to put several people through each one of these trainings to actually kind of get the full benefit, and it's very helpful to do that as well.
That's great, Janice. Thank you. So we're talking about why APICS. Hopefully we've answered that to some degree. So now, why certification? Before I talk about that, I want to mention that there's additional information on the APICS website that can help you determine not only which of the APICS certifications is best for you, but help you determine your preferred way to learn that information and help you determine how you should go about preparing. So we call it our education selector. There is a link here on this slide which you'll be able to use once these slides are posted. And otherwise, from the apics.org website, you would click on the education drop-down box, and the first selection is which program is right for you, and it will take you to these screens, and you can continue to explore more information about the various certifications. So certification. Certifications are awarded by a third-party standard-setting organization, typically not-for-profit, and indicates mastery or competency of a body of knowledge as measured against a defensible set of standards. Those standards are set through an outline of required knowledge and skills, and it's an industry-wide process. APICS starts with a job task analysis. The job task analysis is a complex survey that goes out to professionals around the world, thousands of professionals around the world. We ask them the tasks that they perform, the importance of those tasks, as well as the frequency of those tasks, and we gather that information together to determine the set of standards that are required within that profession. In the case of CSCP, within the supply chain profession. The data that comes out of that job task analysis goes to our exam committees. The exam committees are volunteers who meet, review the data that came from the research, and create what we call an exam content manual, or ECM. The exam content manual provides several things for each of the APICS exams. It provides an outline of the body of knowledge that will be covered in the exam, as well as a list of terms that people should know when taking the exam, vocabulary terms, as well as a set of references or textbooks, sometimes web articles that people could become familiar with in order to help them prepare for the exam. Once the ECM has been completed, then the exam committee starts creating exam questions. The process that we use for creating exam questions or exam items is quite a complex one. We start by creating, we have an item writing workshop process where professionals get together, they review the textbooks that are the references for the exam. They pull questions out of those textbooks. That questions have to be written in a particular style. Actually, many of the questions as they are first written by our volunteers do not make it into the exam. Some are just discarded. Some have to be rewritten or tweaked before they go into an exam. However, when those new questions go into the exam, they are not scored questions immediately. In other words, these are questions that we want our exam candidates to answer, but we do not score them on those questions because we want to gather statistics about each of those brand new questions to ensure that those questions are good questions. How do we define good questions? That's a little tougher to explain. We have certification doesn't use this term, but I like to say a Goldilocks area. We don't want the questions to be too hard, but we don't want the questions to be too easy. And so we try and get somewhere in that Goldilocks area between. And we know that these questions are in that good area because exam candidates have been answering those questions just like they've been answering all the actual exam questions at the same time. And so we can see statistically how people do on those questions. We use a psychometrician who is a statistician who specializes in exams to review these new questions. We gather together another group of volunteers to create what's called a cut score. A cut score process is we look at an exam form, which is an exam with all the various questions on it. So for example, an MPR exam would have 60 questions that are scored, 15 pre-test questions, or a total of 75 questions. And they would look at that exam form, look at the new questions, how did they perform, look at the old questions, how did they perform, and determine what the actual raw score to pass that exam would be. We don't predetermine that the passing of an exam is a certain percentage. In other words, we don't predetermine that, you have to answer 70% of the questions correctly. The reason we don't predetermine it is because all the exams forms are not equal in how hard or difficult or easy they might be. So exam form 1 might have a lot of easy questions. So out of the 60 scored questions, the cut score committee may say, for this exam form, we really want people to correctly answer 45 questions in order to pass this exam. However, the exam form 2 has much more difficult questions, and we know how easy or difficult the questions are based on what people have actually done in the exams, how they have answered the exam questions. So form 2 is more difficult, and that cut score committee may say, in order to pass this exam, because there are more difficult questions, we think that the passing score should be 40. They need to correctly answer 40 of these questions. So now we have an exam form with a passing score of 45, an exam form with a passing score of 40, and we have two candidates. One goes in and takes the first form, the other goes in and takes a second form, and they both score a 42. So how do we tell the one who scored a 42 on the easy form that he or she didn't pass, where we tell the person who scored a 42 on the harder form that they did indeed pass? Well, that's where we start using what's called scaled scores. So that 40 for exam 1 and the 45 for exam 2, those scores are translated into 300. So the passing score on any of the CPIM exams is 300. And then we use an algorithm to determine what the actual score would be if they scored over 45 in the second exam, for example, or below 45 in the second exam. So the goal is to keep the exams of similar weight, to make them very similar in their difficulty, so that so that everybody has the same fair chance with these exams. The other thing I want to emphasize is that this process ensures that many people have reviewed these exam questions, and many candidates have actually answered the exams questions correctly before they're made scored questions on the exam. So we occasionally hear folks who say, oh, those questions are really tricky. Well, they're difficult, but they're definitely not designed to be tricky. And we have lots of data to show that people are successfully answering those questions. So I mentioned the exam content manual, and that's the basis on which the exam items are created using those references. Well, the Courseware team takes the outline and the references and actually creates the courses that we use to help students prepare for the exam. So in the case of CSCP, we create a learning system, which we'll talk about in a little bit. This learning system follows the outline in the exam content manual and follows and uses the references plus additional references to explain and to help students as they're preparing for the exam understand all the concepts that could be tested based on the exam content outline. So this is the process that APICS uses. This is a certification process. It is both defensible, legally defensible, and is a common way that companies that create high stakes certifications, like the CPA, use these processes. There are companies out there that offer certifications that are actually what we would call certificate programs. A certificate program, in contrast to certification, results from an educational process that indicates completion of a course or series of courses. So if the organization says, you come to our class, when you're done we'll give you a test and then we'll give you a certificate, that's a certificate program. A certification program always separates the courseware from the exam. They're two different things, and they're taken independently. So this is why we believe that certification is the best way to go as you continue to build on your career success.
So this is Janice. Let me go through a couple of things here. So we've talked about why APICS, and we've talked about why certification. But let's look at right now why supply chain. So in the past, we've looked at a supply chain maybe kind of off to the side. It hasn't really been important. But as the businesses have become more global, we've had to be able to expand the management of our supply chains, and that management has become critically important. It really is the key driver of success. So in his book, Business at the Speed of Thought, Microsoft founder Bill Gates comments that a manufacturer or a retailer that responds to changes in sales in hours instead of weeks is no longer at heart a product company, but a service company that has a product offering. And this really underscores some very key points. This is what's really changed, because the difference between an order winner or an order loser is the difference in how the supply chain responds. So we are literally working supply chain against supply chain. If you have competition that has the same products that your company has, and the difference in supply chain, if they get the order versus you, it's because they're running their supply chain differently. So it's becoming increasingly a strategic directive for companies. Okay, so it's no longer just about the manufacturing and quality. It's more about how you can deliver what the customer wants. And now we're competing against supply chain, and the supply chain function can make or break a business. But more importantly, and this is kind of important news, is that the Georgia Center of Innovation for Logistics predicts that the demand for supply chain professionals will outstrip supply in the U.S. at the rate of 250,000 jobs over the next few years until 2018 due to a lack of qualified talent. This means that we cannot go out and hire people to fill our supply chain jobs. And what it really means is it says we need to increase the capability of our current competent workforce. And APICS can really help you do that with the CSCP principles. So Celeste, would you like to talk about the CSCP program?
Sure, Janice, thank you. So as Janice mentioned earlier, when she talks about the difference between the CPIM certification and the CSCP certification, she mentioned that CSCP focuses externally, out of your company. So we're looking at how your company connects to your suppliers all the way through to your customers, and how you can take customers' ideas and concepts, desires, and wants and communicate those through your entire organization down to your supply base. So it's really connecting the dots from customer to supplier. In order to do that, the CSC program has taken an exam content manual and made it an outline saying we need to cover all these different topics, including globalization, how do we use information technology, logistics, and all other kinds of concepts and requirements in the supply chain realm. And we said, okay, now let's break it down into three main groups. So there's three major sections within the supply chain, a CSCP program. And there's online tools as well as hard textbooks that you can use to help prepare you to make sure you understand the concepts. So even though the online tools allow you to practice and share and sharpen your knowledge on the material studied throughout the program, they have broken down into 3 books, you only have one exam for the CSCP exam. So after all the courses completed, after the program's completed, one certification exam. And when you pass that exam, every 5 years you need to renew it. And then there's different ways to do that as far as points and maintenance, but it's to keep you fresh as far as supply chains keep changing every day. Different kind of needs, talents, and skills are required. This program keeps you on that cutting edge of continuous improvement in the supply chain realm.
So there are 12 top jobs that come out of, who is the CSCP designed for? And when we're looking at these, we look at the top few. Supply chain managers are really the key to running a supply chain efficiently and effectively. And when we bring in our consultants and our project managers, these are the people that help you with continuous improvement, and so their knowledge is really key in the supply chain arena so that they can help us improve. We have materials managers and supply chain analysts, are the people that keep the products flowing. We have business analysts that keep the financials accurate, and so we can keep the focus on making a profitable business. And logistics managers are critical to the supply chain. They're one of the top expenses in our supply chain and one of the most necessary to making our supply chain very agile. So buying and purchasing are also critical in managing costs and making the supply chain lean and efficient. So the CSCP is designed to support how each of these roles collaborate for a successful supply chain. So it does a very good job of looking at the overlap and how everybody is focused together.
Thank you, Janice. I'll also mention, you'll notice at the bottom of the slide that we do have people in cross-functional departments who have earned the CSCP in order to better be able to communicate with and to work with the supply chain people and the rest of the company. So how has industry been accepting the APICS CSCP? Well, currently we have more than 20,000 CSCP designees in 89 countries. You can see we've sold 44,000 learning systems, 31,000 exams have been administered, but really more importantly, the CSCP is preferred and required in job postings around the world. The learning system that APICS created has been recommended by 90% of all the users who prepared for the CSCP exam and has a net promoter score of 29, which is actually quite good. Anything over a 0 is good, and the higher you go, the better it is. This is a partial, and I do mean partial, list of corporations that have been holding CSCP courses or encouraging their employees. In a few cases, companies that have required CSCP for specific job categories within their company. And these are folks that also, for certain jobs, will say CSCP preferred or required in their job advertisements. So Janice, why is APICS CSCP critical to supply chain success?
Well, thanks for asking, Bob. Supply chain is about collaboration, okay, and it's about cooperation between all the functions. And it really is about, getting the interactions and the interdependencies really visible, okay? So you have multiple supply chains for your business that touch other supply chains of your partners' businesses. And so to really collaborate between the two of those and work on those interactions, you get a really great thing where you can actually see into the other partners' supply chains, and therefore you can make your supply chain move very quickly by increasing the velocity of how your products move, and again, like decreasing the variability, the unknowns, because you're actually seeing. And so what CSCP does is it gives you those insights to how to put these pieces together. How do you do this? What's the best thing for working with the different partners? And it helps you really navigate through all of these things, and it really gives you a grasp of a good supply chain. And I think that one of the things that always is very helpful is the fact that if the partners in the supply chain all study CSCP, you're all talking the same language and you're all talking the same process, and it really helps that collaboration process, gel and work a good way. So it's really important to really understand how collaboration across the partners is really going to help all the partners in the supply chain.
That's great. Thank you, Janice. Celeste, can you talk to us about how CSCP benefits individual employees?
Yes, absolutely, Bob. So one of the common questions I get from people that are interested in improving their skills in the area of supply chain management, they say, how is this going to help me? I usually say back is, how can it not help you? That's a double negative there. But what I'm saying is, APICS has done the research. They've decided and put together a material for you that says this is how effective or efficient or innovative supply chains work. And as Janice was mentioning, there's these common problems that happen that everyone that's in the supply chain profession experience. So this is the better ways to do it. This is how it should work. So by learning how things should work, go back into your daily job and in your companies and find ways to improve things. So you're increasing your own competencies and doing jobs. Maybe you've done the same job for a long time, or you're looking for the next role. They've set the roadmap for you. As well as, it's important to note that CSCP, the last letter in the acronym is professional. So what this does allows you to become a certified professional in what you do on a daily basis by setting your education level to the skill set on the worldwide supply chain stage. So we're saying this is what it takes for professionals to be successful individually, but also within their company. So improving lead times within your organization, like Janice mentioned, understanding how your systems, whether it be ERP or otherwise, work, and being able to translate common problems that we're experiencing between organizations into a common practice and how to improve it using the APICS body of knowledge as the standard. So really the true benefit is having the answers already given to you on how to improve your supply chain and being able to go back to your companies and be the rock star in bringing the change that is necessary to collaborate.
In addition to that, APICS has done some surveys. We've surveyed people that earned the certification during that first year, within the first year of attaining the certification. We asked them in which following areas has CSCP certification and or the learning system contributed to your career advancement. We did ask them to select any of these that applied, and you can see from increased knowledge to salary increase and so on, promotions, the responses we got. 83% of those surveys reported positive career impacts, and again, this is all within their first year of having earned the certification. We do know from additional research that CSCP certified people over time do end up earning more than non-certified individuals in those same positions. So how about benefits to organizations, Celeste?
So just like with CSCP benefits the individual, if the individuals are working to increase efficiency and drive profitability, organizations are ultimately going to benefit. The biggest benefit is the alignment that comes by stacking up the requirements from the customer all the way down to the supplier and being able to have that increased profitability. That's why companies exist, to make money. So organizations are looking at improving their human talent in a way that aligns all those requirements from end to end of the supply chain to increase that profitability. So companies are being tasked with changing supply chains, ever-changing by customer demands. You need people that are flexible, so you need to train them to have the knowledge to be able to recognize the change and implement that change. So alignment of strategies, alignment of the supply chain as a whole, increased profitability are the three big reasons why organizations benefit from CSCP.
That's great. So we've talked about why APICS, why certification, why supply chain. If you're interested in the APICS CSCP program, then the next question is, how do you prepare? Well, APICS has gone to great expense to create the CSCP learning system that includes 3 print modules, actually 5 books to cover the material, the exam content manual, and online educational activities such as practice tests, flashcards, a practice exam at the end that's very similar. In fact, the practice exam at the end of the course uses retired CSCP questions from earlier exams. So it's just like the exam that you're going to take. This material, as you can see, 90% of the users who have used the learning system recommend it as preparing for the CSCP exam. We've used all the references that were in the exam content manual, as well as additional material to help people prepare for this exam. The other interesting thing about this learning system is that it can be used for either independent study or it can be used within a classroom setting. And we certainly have a number of partners who offer CSCP courses and use the learning system as a central piece of their course. So Janice, Celeste, how would you go about preparing for the APICS CSCP exam?
Well, thanks, Bob. So as Bob mentioned, the independent study is one of the options that you can use for the CSCP. Using the materials that were on the previous slide is very important. This course can be done online by your, independent study. If that is your study style. A lot of people like it, and a lot of people say, hey, maybe that's not for me. The other options that are out there are an instructor facilitated, either online or a face-to-face in a classroom. There's many instructors out there. Celeste and I are both instructors for both of these. And these are for people that would like the more hands-on with the instructor, the ability to kind of ask questions, and also like in a room like that, different companies come together with different experiences, and really like learning from other companies is really a great experience. It's one of the most powerful things that I've seen as an instructor. And then also there are companies such as a company I just came from, DuPont, and other companies who offer like a corporate learning process, and what was required in DuPont for various people to hold a CSCP in order to hold the positions that they had. So we provide it in a group setting. So there's other ways if you really want to take a look at it. Go on the APICS CSCP learning system at that link that'll be provided in these PowerPoints when you get them, and it'll give you kind of an idea of what it looks like. It's really the tools that you're given are good tools, and they're really precisely what you need to help you pass the exams. But Celeste, I'm going to let you give them the good news about what time investment to look at.
It truly is good news. So this stuff is the material within the CSCP program and series is weighty. It's great information. And beyond just reading or attending class, students that are successful in preparing for the exam have said that they spend anywhere between 75 to 100 hours, maybe even more, depending on your study style and your familiarity with the concepts here. So estimate about 100 hours of actually spending time reading the books, practicing the questions, learning the vocabulary, marinating the material to prepare for the exam. So typically what I recommend, and this is exactly the path that I've personally taken, is that you study the materials and then you look for the opportunity to take the exam right after. So you match up your scheduling of your study time with the exam content, the exam window.
Yeah, that's true, Celeste. And in fact, we often encourage people to not put off the exam. It's really interesting. One of the things that people that have purchased the learning system or have come to APICS and gotten, been provided with eligibility information, and we've said, why haven't you taken the exam yet? And many of them say, well, I just don't feel prepared yet. When they go take the exam, most of them are very successful. So one of the things that we really know is that people, after going through this system, are much more prepared than they may believe they are initially. So when it comes to taking the APICS exam, these exams are offered around the world. We use a company called Pearson VUE. They have computer-based test centers. When you're ready, when you decide to take the exam and register, registration is always open for the scheduled test windows. Again, it's 1 4-hour timed exam, 175 multiple choice questions for the CSCP, 150 of those are scored questions. So what are the other 25? Well, they're those pre-test questions I was talking about earlier. And the results are delivered to you instantly at the test center. So if you're interested or for what additional information, you can go to the URL that's listed on this slide. I certainly recommend downloading the free CSCP exam bulletin, which will give you a great deal more information about the exams itself. These are the test dates in North America and outside North America through 2016. Again, this is on the website as well, but does give you, additional information. And as Celeste said, it's great to time your study so that you're wrapping up your study a couple of weeks to a month before you actually take the exam. So we often recommend that you set up your exam and in like 3 months in advance, 4 months in advance, and then start studying toward that goal. If you're taking a class, then the great thing about that is that they provide the schedule for you. So you'll do additional study outside the classroom during the weeks that the week that you're taking the class, as well as additional studying afterwards to finalize your preparation and go take the exam. The longer you wait, the more likely the chance that you'll start slipping on some of the details. Now, the CSCP exam does have exam requirements, and this should be done prior to buying anything, prior to registering for an exam. In fact, you're unable to register for exam until you have eligibility. Now, to be eligible for the CSCP, you must meet one of the following criteria: 3 years of supply chain related business experience, or a bachelor's degree, or the international equivalent, or have a CPIM, CFPIM, CERM, SCORP, CPIM, CSM, CPSM, the last 3 coming from our friends at the Institute for Supply Management. So if you have one of these criteria, you would be eligible, and once you've got your eligibility, submitting the eligibility application is totally free, and once you've been approved, that approval never expires. So if you're at all interested, check your eligibility first, and that will stay with you as you get ready to prepare for the actual exam itself. Now, I promised a special offer, and the special offer is this. If you order an individual APICS CSCP learning system between today, February 17th, and the end of February, February 29th this year, and provide the discount code CSCP217 upon checkout, you will save $50 on the price. So we're showing here the regular pricing for the systems as either a member or non-member, and by the way, you more than make up the savings and membership if you're purchasing the learning system and the exam membership is an absolute must. It will help you in a variety of ways. So again, this code is CSCP 217. Think of 217 as February 17th. So CSCP 217, and again, we have a URL here, or you can call the numbers that are listed here. And again, all this information will be posted and available to you in the coming weeks. So we did leave some time to have some questions. So let's pick up what questions we can in the time we have left. I will tell everyone now, and we'll tell you again at the end, that all of the questions that have been coming in, we've got some really great questions here. All of the questions that are coming in will be consolidated into a list of questions, and they will be answered in a document that will be posted with this webinar on apics.org when we're ready to post the webinar. So if we don't get to your question today, know that we will address it in the Q&A document. So we've got a lot of questions, which is great. I'm going to head up toward the top, some of the earlier ones. So what is your experience with salary increases for employees who obtain CSCP certification? That's always a good question. Why would you put this investment in? Our experience in research that we do on a quarterly basis is that, as I mentioned before, people with an APICS certification make more than folks in the same positions, same basic education, but without the certification. It varies in amount from 9% to 14%, sometimes higher, depending on the group that we're surveying and the time that we're doing it. But we pretty consistently see that. Celeste, Janice, do you have anything anecdotal to add to that?
This is Janice. From my experience, with the requirement of certain roles in the company that required CSCP, in order to get promoted into those roles, you needed the certification. So that, in and of itself, for promotional purposes, was one of the drivers of people taking CSCP.
And I would add to that, Janice. And so I've worked in an organization. I have friends that also work in organizations where they weren't automatically receiving pay increases when they received their certification, just like with any other degree program. But what it did allow them to do was to apply to new opportunities. So when it's preferred, or even if it's not preferred, being able to have that designation and communication of the skill set is valuable when trying to go for new positions within an organization. So I can personally say that from the time I certified to now, which has been a short window of 5 or 6 years, I've seen pay increases about what Bob is saying without changing jobs.
Sometimes I advise people that you may not see an immediate increase in your pay just because you got the certification, but over time, if you're more valuable to your employer, they or someone else who recognizes your value will certainly pay you more. I had a similar situation. I got my first CPIM in '92, CSCP in 2006, and my personal salary during those years as a practitioner and a consultant went up dramatically after earning APICS certifications. Someone asked, you mentioned that CSCP is kind of a master CPIM. I have not CPIM certification. Do you see any problem for me to go directly to CSCP? Ladies?
Yeah, so that was Yeah, that was me. This is Janet. So one of the things that it depends on your focus and where you are in your organization. If you're more at a practitioner level, obviously, the CPIM is better for you. And we have seen, and this is just anecdotal from the students that I have, I've seen that people do better passing the CSCP after they've had the CPIM. However, what we do in our classes is we take people who haven't been through CPIM and we kind of surround them with people who have been, so kind of more of a coaching thing. I know Celeste and I have talked about the fact that it's good to have the basics of supply chain management, which is Module 1 before you go into CSCP. But again, it is doable to take CSCP, without previous classes. But really focus on the supply chain portion of it, because that's the key thing in there.
Very good. We've got a couple of questions around the learning system that I want to address. Just as general information, in 2014 we did a new job task analysis because supply chain profession is changing more dramatically than other professions. And so in 2016 we released an entirely new exam content manual, new learning system. There have been significant changes from the learning systems and the exams previously. So one individual said they had a 2011 learning system. Could they use that to study? And I'm afraid I'd have to say that will not help you pass the 2016 exam. There have been too many changes. There were changes in 2012 and now changes again in 2016, again to keep up with the body of knowledge around supply chain management. So I would say not. Now, I've got a couple of people that said they have a 2015 and they haven't tested yet. We have arranged with Pearson VUE to offer both the 2015 exam and the 2016 exam concurrently through the first half of 2016. So if you've been studying with the 2015 learning system, you still have several months in which to take that 2015 exam. But when you schedule your exam, just be very, very careful that you're scheduling the 2015 exam for yourself and not the new exam. Someone else asked a similar question, but their access, online access, which lasts a year, will be ending in March, and they wanted to know if they could extend it. That 1 year is pretty firm except for in one condition, and that condition is if you schedule an exam and then call the 800 number that's in your learning system and tell the customer service rep that you have registered for an exam, we will extend your online access until that exam date. So if you don't have the opportunity, the person whose online access ends in March, to take the exam before that access ends, go ahead and register for the exam again before the before this summer, so you can still take the 2015 and then call the number and they'll extend it for you. A lot of great questions. Hard to select. I'm kind of skipping around because I know that we'll answer everything after this is over, regardless. Well, we've got another question. Do you recommend? We've had several about CPM before CSCP, or the other way around, or do I need the first CPIM module before CSCP? Celeste, you want to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a benefit to taking that, like Janice mentioned, taking that CPIM basic supply chain management. So you don't have to have a CPIM. You don't have to. It does give you the more in-depth version, like you said, the internal workings and processes, the planning process of an organization. Basic supply chain management at the beginning of CPIM should be just enough to help you get in, springboard you into CSCP given your experience. So if you got some working experience behind you, it should be fine. If you really are uncertain and you haven't taken a class in a long time, this is usually where the anxiety is coming from. You haven't taken an exam in a long time, in class in a long time. It doesn't hurt to reach out to APICS or your local chapter and talk to an instructor. So this is my experience, this is what I'm thinking. Is going to be okay. And really even look at the demo downloads and stuff like that to see if your familiarity with it. But generally about what I'm getting, what I usually get, the root of what I'm getting at is people are generally more anxious about taking a class and taking an exam because they haven't done it in a long time. Does that answer the question, do you think?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Unfortunately, we've hit the 2 o'clock mark, so we will honor everyone's time and close the questions for today, but we will consolidate all the questions and answer them in a Q&A document. That will be posted with this webinar at apics.org. Everyone will receive an email with this link. Anyone who is registered for this will receive that email. Please feel free to share the link with your colleagues, your boss, or other decision makers in your company. As a reminder, this is a part 1 of a 3-part series. The next 2 coming up on March 1st and March 15th. We hope you'll all be able to join us there. Again, share the registration with anyone you'd like. We'd be happy to have anyone and everyone come find out more about the CSCP. These are some of the resources that we talked about today. Again, having that opportunity once you've got the PowerPoint to click on the URL and go. We've got a great video of Celeste Ayers sharing her story with CSCP. I know everyone will enjoy that as well, so I encourage you to take a moment for that. So thank you for attending and sending us your questions and comments. Your feedback helps us refine our programs to better address your needs, and we really appreciate it. Have a great day, and we hope you will all attend parts 2 and 3. All content and materials included in this online event are the property of APICS and are protected by the United States and international copyright laws. All rights are reserved. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for participating.